Chapter 33. Strange Things Happen in Kyoto. Draconic Dais. Earth. Japan, Tokyo. While Aiden was punishing Kazamachi and Toka for the disaster they had caused under the pretext of casual training, Karumi walked out of a cat cafe with a satisfied expression on her face. "What a wonderful day," she murmured, her voice adorned with a dazzling smile that made the pedestrians around her feel lucky to be alive. She was wearing a long-skirted Gothic dress, decorated with frills and floral details in shades of red. Her hair, styled into two pigtails that softly cascaded over her shoulders, framed her angelic face, while her left eye, an enigmatic golden hue, remained hidden beneath her bangs. She was the very image of an elegant Oju-sama. During her time at the cafe, she had played with numerous cats. She found them adorable, and the thought of adopting one lingered in her mind. Perhaps she could turn it into a familiar to extend its lifespan. Not a bad idea, she mused as she strolled through the streets of Tokyo. The city showcased its vibrant daily activity. Towering buildings stretching into the skyline, students returning from school, and office workers hurrying after a long day. It was late, and the lights were beginning to shine like artificial stars along the avenues. As she walked, her eyes caught the presence of several yokai and an occasional exorcist within the crowd. This did not surprise her. Japan was predominantly governed by yokai and the exorcists of the 5 principal clans, along with the Shinto pantheon. However, Karumi didn't concern herself much with hierarchies or who controlled whom. Instead, her mind wandered to something more intriguing, what Yoshino had shared with Aiden. According to her, some yokai in the Kyoto region had been disappearing without a trace. Yoshino had heard this directly from Kunu, who often visited the yokai faction in the region. Intrigued by the information, Aiden investigated using Raziel, discovering that not only yokai were vanishing. Moderately weak supernatural beings and even ordinary humans were disappearing without explanation. According to Raziel, a group was abducting these individuals for sacrifices. But that theory turned out to be a distraction. The true aim of the perpetrator was to lure Yasaka, the yokai leader of Kyoto, out of her territory in order to kidnap her daughter, Kunu. Why? Kunu, a 9-tailed fox, was an immensely valuable vessel for the dark purposes of the kidnapper. A vessel for whom? Well, an extreme worshipper, or perhaps a once loyal subordinate, had been desperately searching for ways to revive their mistress. The one who, in the past, was defeated, sealed, and, out of fear that her prophecy might come true, weakened in her prison before being killed. Her soul was sent directly to Yomi, the Shinto underworld, in a desperate attempt to prevent her threat from resurfacing. Now, this devotee had begun abducting people and sacrificing them, converting them into pure spiritual power to execute his plan. His objective was clear: to revive the mistress who once terrorized Japan, the same one who had been defeated by the united yokai faction, as she was too powerful for anyone to face alone. In a final effort, they managed to seal her within the legendary Killing Stones, where she remained for centuries. However, even after all that time, fear lingered, and she was ultimately killed when her strength had waned. The devotee wishes to bring back the most powerful daiyukai that has ever existed, a figure both feared and revered in mortal myths and the supernatural world. Tamamona Mae, the 9-tailed fox who almost destroyed Japan in ancient times. Although saying she was going to destroy Japan might sound like an exaggeration, in truth, the Shinto gods would never have let her get away with it. However, there was no denying how dangerous she was, especially when she got involved in certain corrupt matters that seriously harmed these gods. As for the reasons behind the 9-tailed fox's attempt to destroy Japan in ancient times, well, Karumi had already forgotten about that. Meanwhile, Karumi remembered how Aiden had shared this information with Yoshino and Yashinon, who, true to their nature, told Yasaka everything. Yoshino, always simple and kind, only wanted to help her friend's mother, so she didn't hesitate to pass on what she knew. This seemingly trivial gesture was enough to completely win over the 9-tailed fox's favor. As for the kidnappings that are still happening despite Yasaka's efforts to protect herself, well, the culprit is hiding in the dimensional rift. From there, he sends his subordinates at unpredictable moments. Yasaka is already aware that his true target is her, or more specifically, her daughter, whom they plan to use as a vessel to revive Tamamonome. However, this hasn't deterred the enemy, who persists in sending more minions. Although casualties among the Yukai have decreased, the attacks on ordinary humans continue to cause problems. And the gods? Well, they prefer to stay out of it. In their view, these little problems don't deserve their attention. That's why they've left the 5 principal clans, along with the Yukai of Kyoto and Kanto, to handle the situation. In other words, they've washed their hands of it. But why doesn't someone just go after the culprit in the dimensional rift? The answer is simple. Finding someone in an infinite space where the sense of direction constantly shifts is nearly impossible. There's a reason Aiden chose that place to build his base. And it's clear he's not the only one using this gap between dimensions as a hiding spot. This follower of Tamamonome has chosen the same method. I wonder if that group of terrorists with strange masks has anything to do with this problem. Karumi thought as she walked. She was referring, of course, to the Chaos Brigade. However, her thoughts were interrupted as she detected several ultimate-class presences surrounding another equally powerful one, a few kilometers away. Driven by curiosity, she decided to approach and observe from afar. After all, once her curiosity was satisfied, she would simply return home. A/N. Honestly, this chapter is short because I didn't have much time or inspiration today. There are comments that truly take away one's motivation to write, but oh well, I know not everyone can like the same things as others. Even so, at least I left a few hints about what will happen in Kyoto. As for who's being attacked, here are some keywords. Black Kitten. By the way, here's an image I found of Karumi. Thank you so much for reading. To everyone who leaves at least a thank for the chapter, you get a big hug. Peace out. Chapter 34, Black Kitty. Draconic Deus. Earth. Japan, Tokyo. Tisk. She clicked her tongue in evident annoyance. Are these ultimate-class devils really this idols? Kuroka sighed. Although she had once been a fugitive hunted by both bounty hunters and devils, she had recently found some measure of peace. After spending years hiding among the Yukai, she had made friends who kept her away from constant danger. However, there were still stubborn devils who sought to capture her. Were they looking to curry favor with a Mao by handing her over? Or was their pride simply unable to accept that a mere slave had killed her master? Flap. On the rooftop of an abandoned building, Kuroka observed the 4 devils pursuing her with disdain. Escaping would be easy with teleportation, but she didn't have time to activate it. Those idiots weren't giving her the chance. To make matters worse, they had placed a barrier over the area, preventing any escape. I should have brought Lu Fei. She would have ignored this ridiculous barrier with her magic. But I didn't want to bother her, she muttered with some frustration. Kuroka, a young woman who had once been a Yukai and was now reincarnated as a devil through the evil pieces of her dead master, whom she had killed with her own hands to protect her beloved sister, now found herself cornered. Her hair as black as the night, her matching kimono, her slender figure, and her golden cat-like eyes stood out under the moonlight. She had come to investigate the disappearances of Yukai, intending to return a favor to Yasaka, who had helped her in her darkest hour. But instead of clues, she found trouble. Now, she was alone, with no backup from her friends. 1 against 4? She could defeat them one by one, but together, that was a different story. Kuroka wasn't reckless. She still had unfinished business with her sister, so she decided not to take any risks. Without hesitation, she fled. At least she had already called for help. Flap! Stop running, you troublesome, stupid criminal. Why don't you surrender? One of the devils shouted from the air, his wings extended as he looked down at her. The rooftop of the building was high, and the full moon loomed behind him. Your friends won't make it in time. You're surrounded. A weak devil like you could never make me surrender. Yeah, she replied disdainfully as she activated her senjutsu to sharpen her senses and avoid any surprises. The devil, offended, responded with a string of curses she ignored. Flap! 4 ultimate-class devils came specifically to capture you. You should feel honored, another devil proclaimed arrogantly. Kuroka laughed mockingly, looking at them as if they were children pretending to be important. Honored? To stand before a cowardly and ugly fool like you? Nya, not even in your wildest dreams, nya, she retorted with a mocking smile. The devil, irritated, insisted. A wandering criminal like you, who had no qualms about killing her own master, should be chained in a cell, awaiting the sacrifice that will teach other Slavs their place. Kuroka narrowed her eyes, a dark smile forming on her lips. If I could kill that scum again, I'd do it 1,000 times, she declared fiercely. But at the thought of her sister, her expression shifted. She clicked her tongue, a mixture of sadness and anger. Why waste time with her? Another devil interjected. Let's attack already. Then we can have our fun with her or turn her in for the reward. The others nodded, and as they continued to spew vulgar remarks, Kuroka felt her rage growing inside her. Karumi observed the spectacle from the top of another building, clearly disgusted. Those filthy devils were repulsive to her. Their vulgarity was no different from that of a group of brainless barbarians. From her privileged position, she watched as the 4 devils attacked Kuroka with various demonic spells. Fire, ice, and other elements rained down on her with the clear intention of killing her. It didn't seem like they were holding back. Weren't they supposed to capture her? Despite everything, Kuroka defended herself skillfully. It was evident that she had more talent and strength than each of them individually, though the problem lay in the numbers. Era, is this what they call Jiu-Jitsu? How fascinating. Yukai truly possess a unique mastery in handling their yuki to perform magic. Oh, but this talent doesn't stop there, does it? Their senjutsu also has a touch worthy of admiration, Karumi commented thoughtfully, resting a finger on her cheek. She continued to observe from the shadows, deciding whether to interfere. As a decent woman, she couldn't allow Kuroka to fall to those barbarians if she ended up losing. Besides, helping her wouldn't take much effort. Kuroka used illusions to confuse her opponents, creating multiple copies of herself or spells that appeared real, while the real one attacked them from unexpected places. Thanks to her senjutsu, she could hide her presence, making it extremely difficult for the devils, even if they were ultimate class, to locate her. Frustrated, the devils began to use more demonic power, destroying the surrounding area. This forced Kuroka to defend herself with barriers, which temporarily dispelled her illusions. However, she quickly created new ones. She also used a poisonous mist that weakened her opponents, followed by black flames of intense heat. Taking advantage of her illusions, she attacked them while remaining hidden. At one point, she managed to trick one of them with an illusion and incinerated him with her flames, eliminating him completely. She's good. You can tell she's used to fighting multiple enemies at once, Karumi murmured to herself, not taking her eyes off the scene. Despite Kuroka's resistance, after killing another devil, the remaining 2 became enraged. One confronted her in close combat, while the other supported him from a distance, finally managing to put her in a tight spot. The situation became complicated, and the fight reached a stalemate. Without further delay, Karumi stepped forward, and her figure vanished into the shadows. Kuroka dodged the devil's melee attack, disappearing into the thick poisonous mist while creating more illusions. At the same time, she used her senjutsu to hide her presence and reinforce her body. "Bitch, come out right now," the devil yelled furiously. The exhaustion was evident in his voice. They had tried to destroy the entire area with wide-range attacks, but the mist made it impossible to locate her. To make matters worse, 2 of them had already fallen. "Come out!" He tried to roar again, but he didn't finish. Bang! A punch reinforced with senjutsu and wrapped in black flames struck him directly in the face, burning his skin and disorienting him. "Bitch!" he roared as his demonic power exploded in response. With a swift movement, the devil managed to grab Kuroka by the arm, though he frowned as he felt something strange. Kuroka's body was too hard to be flesh, but he didn't hesitate and threw a punch reinforced with demonic power. Boom! Kuroka's body was struck, but within seconds, it vanished, revealing that it was nothing more than a piece of wood. "Another illusion?" he exclaimed, stepping back nervously. That cat always attacked from the shadows of her illusions. A sudden, burning pain in his chest interrupted his thoughts. Pierce! Kuroka's right hand, in a knife-like position, pierced his heart. The black flames began to consume him from within as she spoke with a mocking smile. Well, aren't you ashamed, yeah? A group of pure-blood devils crushed by a younger and more charming woman. Yeah. The devil, unable to believe what was happening, watched as the black flames devoured his body. Weren't they ultimate-class devils? Weren't they 4 against 1? How could this be happening? Damn. Shut up, Nya. Your ridiculous villain monologues bore me. You're probably so insignificant you're not even among the 72 pillars, Nya. No one will remember you. So do us all a favor and just die, Nya. The flames burned furiously. Whoosh! The devil's body was completely consumed. He didn't even have time to say his final words. Kuroka prepared to return to her illusions and the mist, but her skin suddenly tingled. Bang! A blue lightning bolt lit up the building, advancing toward her through a magic circle. The last devil, from the sky, beat his wings, his face betraying fear as he looked at Kuroka. She reacted instantly, covering her body with senjutsu and using her yujitsu to create a protective barrier. Bang! The lightning struck the barrier, but her exhaustion was evident. The defense broke quickly, hurling her against a wall. Boom! The wall crumbled, and Kuroka crashed through another and another until she lay trembling on the ground. Luffy? Why is she taking so long? Vali, Biko, Arthur, Chiron. Kuroka was injured and exhausted. Although she had managed to kill 3 opponents of her same level, a feat worthy of praise, the effort had pushed her to her limit. And there was still one more devil. Is the barrier preventing Luffy from locating me? With that doubt in mind, she staggered to her feet. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hole she had created when she was sent flying by the magic attack. She looked ahead and saw the last devil approaching slowly. You're still alive? Monster, is this why you're an SS-class fugitive? He said in a tone that was equal parts incredulous and terrified. It seems we underestimated your strength. 3 of us, dead by your hands. Despite his approach, the devil couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. Kuroka, let out a cold smile. Do you feel it, Nya? That fear crawling through your bones. How pathetic. Wouldn't it be better to run with your tail between your legs? Coward, Nya. She was trying to buy time, even though her body was at its limit. Cough! A thread of blood escaped her throat. She was covered in wounds, her kimono shredded by the impact of the magic attack, but her golden eyes still radiated an intensity that made the devil hesitate for a moment. Shut up, he shouted, trying to regain his resolve. There's no way I'll let you live after killing 3 of us. If I kill you and report it to the underworld, all the credit will be mine, since those 3 no longer exist. The words made Kuroka look at him with disdain. What else could I expect from you, Nya? Don't get me wrong, I know there are good devils out there. But most of you purebloods are always the same. Nya. Unpleasant, disgusting, and treacherous to the core. As she spoke, an illusion began to envelop the room. Cough! The effort was too much, and the illusion crumbled, leaving her exposed. The devil, seeing his opportunity, conjured a magic circle in his hands. You're already weak, so accept your fate. Crackle! A lightning bolt shot toward Kuroka. She tried to create a barrier, but her body wouldn't respond. In her mind, she could only think of one name. Chiron. Era, devil, and his lackeys surrounding a lady at this hour, in such a gloomy place. What an unchivalrous scene, don't you think? A melodious voice interrupted the moment. Kuroka and the devil turned, bewildered, toward the source of the sound. Crackle! The lightning bolt, about to finish Kuroka, was stopped dead by a white hand covered in a bloody aura that emerged from the shadows. Here, I'll give it back to you, The hand twisted unnaturally, aiming at the devil. Wait! Bang! The devil didn't have time to finish his sentence. The lightning, transformed into a javelin, pierced his stomach. Before he could react, more hands emerged from the shadows, wrapping around him and lifting him into the air as they strangled him. The pain in his stomach was unbearable, and the hands didn't even let him speak to beg for forgiveness. Only distorted screams filled with agony escaped his throat. Ugh, what a disgusting voice. Do us all a favor and be quiet, will you? One of the hands covered the devil's mouth as Karumi walked calmly toward Koka. Without haste, she knelt in front of her, and a magic circle began to form in her hand. However, after a few seconds, she canceled it. I was going to use a light spell to heal you, but now that I think about it, you're also a devil, aren't you? Right, the evil piece, I suppose. Light would be rather problematic for you, Karumi murmured, bringing a finger to her lips. So, what should I do? Call Dana-sama, maybe, she concluded as Koka watched her, confused and unsure of what to say. Who are you? Why are you helping me, nya? Karumi pondered for a few moments before responding. Reason? Who needs one? I sensed your little skirmish from afar and decided to snoop around. But when I saw these brutes, I just couldn't resist the urge to get rid of them. Trash like this deserves nothing else. And, as a kind-hearted lady, I couldn't bring myself to return home knowing you were about to die here, right? Karumi stood up after saying this and contacted Aiden to come. Koka, still wary, used her senjutsu to check if Karumi had bad intentions, but she found none. I see. It seems you're being sincere, nya, she murmured, relaxing a little. Then, she let her guard down, though only slightly, and added, Thank you for helping me, nya. Without the strength to defend herself, the only thing she could do was give thanks. Do you have somewhere to treat your wounds, Kitty-chan? Karumi asked with apparent interest. My friends should be on their way. And Kitty-chan. Koka blinked, confused. They had never called her that. It's simple. I don't know your name, and since you're a cute yukai with cat ears, it seemed like a fitting nickname. Karumi smiled calmly, tilting her head slightly. But if your friends are already on their way, I suppose I don't need to worry about you, right? Karumi shifted her gaze toward the devil. The body was already motionless, its empty eyes reflecting a slow and excruciating death caused by the wound in its stomach and the strangulation of the shadows. Karumi, showing no interest, let the body drop to the ground. My name is Koka, nya, said Koka, observing the corpse with satisfaction. Well, my name is Tokisaki Karumi. Karumi responded, introducing herself with the false surname she had adopted in this world. As they talked, they felt the barrier break, and four presences approached quickly. Footsteps echoed in the air, followed by a voice filled with concern. Koka, are you okay? I'm so sorry it took me so long. A blonde girl with a hat on her head and a broom in her hand came running toward them. However, upon noticing Karumi's presence, she stopped abruptly, held back by a blonde boy standing behind her. Alongside them, a monkey-shaped yukai and a young man with silver hair cautiously watched Karumi from the other side of the room. What a peculiar group you have here. 2 humans, a yukai, and a half-devil, Karumi remarked with a light smile. Koka couldn't help but chuckle as she saw her companion. Yes, nya. She's not an enemy, nya. She's the one who saved me, nya, Koka explained, calming her companions. Lu-Fei was the first to approach. Seeing Koka's injuries, her face filled with worry and guilt, knowing she had taken too long to decipher the coordinates Koka had sent due to the barrier. I'm sorry, she murmured through tears, while Koka weakly laughed. It wasn't your fault, Lu-Fei. Koka reassured her with a tired but gentle smile. If I had let you help me and we'd come to investigate together, none of this would have happened, Naya. Despite her words, Lu-Fei couldn't help but cry as she hugged Koka and helped her stand up. Arthur, the blonde boy, and Biko, the monkey yukai, thanked Karumi, who responded with a dismissive wave of her hand. Even Vali, the silver-haired boy, joined in the gesture of gratitude before conversing with Albion, the dragon within his sacred gear. She's strong, Valis said mentally. Yes, she's stronger than you. Though, I must admit, I can't calculate her strength with absolute precision, Albion replied serenely. After a while, Valis suggested taking Koka to Azazel to heal her. However, before they could act, a spatial distortion opened right beside Karumi, putting everyone on high alert. Everyone except Karumi, who, completely calm, spoke in a relaxed tone. Dana-sama, you took your time. From the distortion emerged Aiden, who cast a quick glance around before responding calmly. I was busy helping Makuro and the others set the table, but it seems I'll miss dinner now. A/N. Was it forced how Aiden and Karumi met Vali's team? Yes. Do I care that it's forced and that some critics will say nonsense and blah blah blah? Yes, but I'll try to ignore those comments, as many of you suggested. Chapter 35, Vali Team. Draconic Deus. Earth, Japan. Tokyo. Avalon Residence. A few hours before Karumi called Aiden to the building where the black kitten had been injured. Intrigued, Aiden, Kazamachi, who feared that Aiden might punish them for causing so much commotion at the training grounds, broke the silence. Yes, Kazamachi, he replied, curious. Question, weren't you going to punish me? She asked with a slightly nervous tone. She didn't want to be spanked like the Typhoon Queen. It would be a direct blow to her greatness and, moreover, terribly embarrassing. Her head rested on his chest as they lay in bed in Aiden's dorm room, wrapped in each other's arms. Toka, on the right, was fast asleep, a smile on her face. Not at all. It was just a joke. Besides, I've already made you wear several embarrassing outfits, so consider that your punishment. Aiden smiled, making it clear he wasn't upset. After all, he could repair the training grounds in no time. Affirmation. Aiden is too in love with me to punish me. Kazamachi responded with a triumphant smile. She spoke like Yuzuru, but behaved like Kagaya. Quite literally, both were now one, though they still existed simultaneously in a peculiar way. Well, you didn't tell any lies, Aiden admitted as his smile widened. But maybe I should punish you harder. How about making you wear that bunny costume? Kazamachi instantly blushed, much like Kagaya did whenever Aiden teased her. Helpless. After making me wear these outfits one after another. Idol, nurse, maid, cheerleader, teacher, shrine maiden, nun. And you still haven't had enough? And now you want to keep going? You're a beast, Aiden, Kazamachi exclaimed. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she tried to maintain a dignified air of reproach. They had been having S*X for so long that Toka had fallen asleep, but this man seemed endless. Although she couldn't help but feel happy that he was still so in love with her, enough to want to spend hours together, she still considered him a beast. Not only had he made her wear all those embarrassing outfits, but now he insisted she put on a bunny costume. Finally, she gave in, put on the costume, and played with her carrot a little longer. After a while, Aiden took the time to clean the room, which was a mess and still had that unmistakable lascivious scent lingering. Carefully, he carried Toka, Yuzuru, and Kagaya, who had split back into two, to their respective rooms, as they were sound asleep. When he finished, he went down to the first floor and joined Kotori and Natsumi, who were playing video games. Yoshino and Yashinon watched from the couch, entertained by the exchange of blows in the fighting game. It was a regular pastime for them, and they seemed to enjoy it a lot. Meanwhile, Makuro was in the kitchen preparing dinner, as it was already dark outside. On the other hand, Miku, Nia, and Origami remained in their rooms, and Karumi had yet to return. Aiden closed his eyes for a moment and connected with Karumi through their spiritual bond. He could feel she was in Tokyo, probably strolling around after spending time at a cat cafe. Karumi-san still hasn't returned, commented Yoshino, who was sitting beside him, dressed in casual attire. Maybe she found something interesting that caught her attention, Aiden replied calmly, and Yoshino nodded slightly. Or maybe she just got too distracted playing with the kittens, added Yashinon in her usual sarcastic tone. Why don't we just adopt a cat? After all, this is our home now. We don't need to keep playing the heroes who save the world, commented Kotori without taking her eyes off the screen, as she executed a crucial move in her match against Natsumi. Sure, we could also turn the cat into a familiar, extend its lifespan, or even make it immortal if it becomes powerful enough, added Natsumi with a mischievous smile, right before chaining a devastating combo against Kotori. Ah! Exclaimed Kotori, surprised by the unexpected attack. With precision, Natsumi moved her small fingers on the controller and finished the fight, reducing Kotori's health bar to 0. Natsumi wins, announced the screen in big, bright letters. Furious, Koka threw the controller to the floor. Ugh, what an absurdly overpowered character, she complained, while the others watched the scene with a mix of confusion and amusement. However, the controller never hit the floor. It floated mid-air and returned to her hand thanks to her telekinesis. Aiden and the others couldn't help but wonder why on earth she had thrown it in the first place. Anger issues? Maybe. In the kitchen, Mukuro had begun serving the dishes. Seeing this, Aiden and Yoshino joined in to help. "Thank you, Nushi-sama," Mukuro said with a smile as they continued placing the dishes on the table. After a while, most of the dishes were on the table, and everyone was gathered, except Karumi. Toka, Kagaya, and Yuzuru, despite being tired, came down to have dinner with their family. Nia, meanwhile, was watching the three in such a peculiar way that anyone might feel the urge to punch her. When they were about to contact Karumi through their spiritual connection, Aiden received a telepathic message from her. "Dana-sama, could you come to my location?" asked Karumi, her voice sounding as though she were entertained. Aiden raised an eyebrow, and the others, noticing he was talking to her, continued setting the table while chatting among themselves. "What's going on? Did you find something interesting? Or are you still playing with cats?" Aiden asked. "I wasn't playing with cats," she protested, mentally stammering with evident embarrassment before mentally clearing her throat to recover her composure. "I found a Yukai girl with surprising talent. She's injured, and while I could heal her, since she's a devil, light element healing spells would only harm her further. That's why I need you to come, darling." Aiden, knowing Karumi well, immediately understood. She had probably come across something interesting while strolling, decided to investigate, and ended up taking care of the injured cat girl. "Why don't you use Zafkiel to rewind her wounds to when they were healed?" he asked, knowing she could easily do so. "I thought you didn't want me revealing Zafkiel, you know? Dana-sama has become quite famous after that battle." "That was at the beginning," Aiden replied. "I don't mind if people know now that I'm the guy who fought Great Red. I only hid my identity to blend into this world without issues. You should know that." "I see. In any case, come here for a moment, will you? I can feel the presence of a Longinus user nearby. Weren't you eager to analyze one of those? You didn't get the chance with the boosted gear that day, did you? I'll wait here, dear." And with those words, Karumi ended the mental communication. Aiden remained silent for a few moments, wondering how Karumi had suddenly found a Longinus user. There are only 13 of them, you know? They are scattered across the world, making encountering one an extremely rare occurrence. However, Aiden decided to stand up from his chair. Analyzing a Longinus was something that intrigued him, but he had also considered meeting Azazel, the leader of Grigori, to exchange knowledge. What could Aiden offer in return? He had some rare materials, but he doubted that would be enough for Azazel to share the research of his lifetime with a stranger. Perhaps if he managed to become his ally, he could gain access to that research. Another option would be to reveal the method of crafting modified, evil pieces capable of producing fallen angels, something that would undoubtedly catch Azazel's attention. But Aiden didn't want to hand over that knowledge so easily. Wouldn't the same thing happen as with the devils? The fallen angels might begin forcing humans to reincarnate, creating a new disaster for humanity. Although Aiden didn't see himself as a hero destined to protect humanity, he was still human. Well, half human, and couldn't help but worry about them. That's why he preferred to avoid letting that knowledge fall into the wrong hands. If he managed to analyze some sacred gears, perhaps he could attempt to craft them on his own. "Are you going somewhere, Nushi-sama?" Mukuro asked, having just finished setting the dishes on the table with the help of the others. Nia, Miku, Toka, Yuzuru, Kagaya, Kotori, Natsumi, Yoshino, and Yashinon also looked at him curiously. "I'm going to find Karumi. You can start eating first if you want, since we might take a while," Aiden replied as he excused himself. "Ha! Karumi-chin must have found something interesting if she called you," commented Nia, to which the others nodded. "It's probably cats, I'm sure," added Miku with a sly grin. "I agree," all of them replied in unison. If Karumi had been present, she probably would have scolded them for mocking her. "Anyway, I'll be back soon," Aiden said before heading to the center of the living room. The others nodded and began eating while chatting among themselves. Aiden, for his part, raised his right hand and grabbed the space in front of him, opening a spatial distortion. Without hesitation, he stepped through the portal to Karumi's location. Aiden calmly emerged from the spatial distortion, dressed in casual clothes that contrasted with the disheveled surroundings of the abandoned building. His gaze first landed on Karumi, who greeted him with a playful smile. "Dana-sama, you took your time," she said in a teasing tone. Aiden quickly scanned his surroundings. The shattered walls and demonic energy lingering in the air gave him clues about what had happened. It didn't take him long to notice the injured Yukai girl and the corpse of a devil lying a few meters away. With one look, he could get a general idea of the situation. "I was busy helping Makuro and the others set the table, but it seems I'll miss dinner now," he responded calmly while glancing back at Karumi. The group present, Vali, Koka, Biko, Arthur, and Luffy, immediately tensed upon sensing the dangerous aura emanating from Aiden. For Vali, the temptation of a fight was immediate. His hands itched at the thought of battling someone so powerful. However, Albion warned him in his mind not to act recklessly. Perhaps later he could request training from him, but for now, it was best not to make him an enemy without knowing his intentions. Biko and Koka, both practitioners of Senjutsu, detected no malicious intent in Aiden, but remained on guard nonetheless. Meanwhile, Arthur and Luffy silently observed as Aiden and Karumi conversed in a surprisingly informal manner, almost as if the rest weren't even there. Finally, Aiden turned his attention to the group. "Well, there's no need to be so tense. I'm only here to heal the cat girl at Karumi's request. Do you want me to heal her or not?" Although Aiden knew Karumi could handle the situation perfectly fine, he had no problem lending a hand now that he was there. Before anyone could respond, Luffy used magic to lift Koka and approached with visible concern. "Can you heal her?" she asked, looking at Aiden with hope. Arthur shook his head as he followed his sister, cautiously moving toward the duo. "Luffy, you shouldn't approach a stranger so carelessly. What will you do if he decides to attack you suddenly?" Arthur scolded, casting a serious look at both Aiden and Karumi. Then, straightening himself with elegance, he added in a more courteous tone, "I am Arthur Pendragon. If you have the ability to heal my comrade, I would be deeply grateful." Luffy, however, interrupted with a confident smile. "Elder brother, they don't have any bad intentions. That's why Koka and Biko are so relaxed. Anyway, my name is Luffy Pendragon. If you could heal Koka, we'd greatly appreciate it." "Oh, and we could be friends too." "That's fine," Aiden replied as he approached Koka. With a calm gesture, he placed his hand on the cat's head. She looked at him silently, but said nothing. "Zafkiel, Dalit," Aiden said mentally. His golden left eye changed, taking on the same appearance as Karumi's, as the clock hand in his pupil turned until it pointed to the number 4. Immediately, Koka's wounds began to heal as her body's time rewound to a state prior to the injuries. Luffy watched in amazement, quickly deducing it was time manipulation. "By the way, my name is Aiden Avalon." "A pleasure to meet you, Pendragon-san," Aiden said, addressing the two blondes after completing the process. "You can call me Luffy, and you don't need to use honorifics with me. I'm not from Japan." Luffy replied with a radiant smile, happy to see Koka fully recovered. "You can call me Arthur," her brother added formally. "Oh, amazing, yeah. It's like my wounds never existed." "Thank you, nya," Koka exclaimed, now fully healed. With a quick magic spell, she replaced her damaged kimono with a new one and approached Aiden to thank him. "You're too close," Aiden thought as he caught the sweet scent emanating from her. After talking for a while, everyone introduced themselves. They held a good opinion of Aiden and Karumi for saving and healing their friend. So after the introductions, the atmosphere became more relaxed. "Aiden-sama, are you British?" Luffy asked curiously as she observed the boy's white hair and reflected on his surname, Avalon. In Arthurian mythology, King Arthur was taken to Avalon to heal his wounds, and in this mythical world, that was a fact. "Well, half," Aiden replied calmly. "My mother was British and my father Japanese. That's where my name comes from." As he spoke, he couldn't help but remember Ravel as Luffei called him Aiden-sama in the same way she used to. Luffei nodded, apparently satisfied with the response. "How old are you, nya?" Kuroka asked, tilting her head in curiosity. Although Aiden appeared to be about 16 years old, she could feel the immense power he radiated, and in a world where anyone could alter their appearance, the question was inevitable. Aiden remained silent, visibly uncomfortable. Admitting that he was an old man wasn't high on his list of priorities. Karumi's restrained laughter broke the tension. Luffei, Kuroka, Biko, Arthur, and Vali turned confused gazes toward Karumi. Their expressions synchronized as they tried to understand the joke. "Fufu, Danasama isn't as young as he looks," Karumi explained with a mischievous smile. "He acts this way because he sealed his personality to avoid changing over time." "Oh, so how old are you? Are you an old man in a kid's body?" Biko asked from his flying cloud, crossing his arms with an amused grin. Aiden frowned, shooting an annoyed look at the monkey Yukai. Before he could respond, a voice echoed from behind Vali. He must have over a century of experience. That killing intent, refined through countless battles, and that overwhelming strength aren't achieved overnight. Sealing your own personality to remain unchanging, truly fascinating, analyzed Albion from Vala's sacred gear. Aiden sighed, resigned. "Fine. I'm 120 years old. I'm a grandpa. Happy now," he said with a mix of sarcasm and weariness. Then he added, "Anyway, I sealed my personality because I didn't want to change or become old and boring. I also didn't want my hobbies to change or to turn into someone I wouldn't recognize." The group processed his words quickly. After all, in this mythological world, living for over a century wasn't particularly strange. There were far stranger people wandering around. A moment of silence passed before Vali, unable to contain himself any longer, finally addressed Aiden. "Fight me." The declaration was direct, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. For Vali, the idea of testing his strength was irresistible. Not only did he enjoy combat, but he also had a feeling that facing Aiden would make him stronger. The stronger he became, the closer he would be to fulfilling his goal of defeating his grandfather. Aiden looked at him curiously, wondering if this boy was yet another battle addict who couldn't resist a good fight. "Why?" "There's no deep reason. I just want to measure my strength against yours. To face you and see how far I can go," Vala said with unwavering confidence, straight to the point. But I don't gain anything from this," Aiden remarked, crossing his arms as he evaluated the situation. At another time, he might have agreed without a second thought, but now he wanted to get something out of the proposal. Vala's group collectively face-bombed, sighing in unison. They were used to their leader's impulsive antics. "What do you want?" Vali asked impatiently. If fulfilling a condition was what it took to convince Aiden, he was willing to do it, as long as he could gain a new training partner. How about letting me see and analyze your sacred gear if I win?" Aiden replied, pretending to think for a moment before making his proposal. "I don't mind," Vala said immediately, while Albion in his mind confirmed he had no objections either. "All right, do you want to fight here in this abandoned building?" Aiden asked, gesturing at the ruined surroundings. "No, come with me. I'll take you somewhere we can fight without interruptions," Vala said as he started walking, not waiting for a response. Thus, the entire group was forced to move to a different location. While following him, Aiden reflected on Vala's power. He wanted to know how strong he was compared to his rival, the wielder of the boosted gear. For their part, Karumi, Luffei, Arthur, Kuroka, and Biko merely exchanged glances. End of chapter. A/N. When Aiden uses Analyze on the Longinus, and later examines more normal, sacred gears scattered around the world off-screen, I plan for him to gain the ability to create them. My idea is to craft some for his subordinates, though I also want to make special, sacred gears for Kuroka, Ravel, Luffei, and the other members of the harem, except for the spirits, who are already powerful enough. The intention is for Aiden to visit the spirit world in Alicia, his previous world, and capture several spirits, such as Ifrit, Salamander, Sylphid, Undine, and others. to turn them into independent, sacred gears that he will give both to his subordinates and his harem. For example, I plan to include Regulus Aurum from Strike the Blood as a spirit in that world and later assign him to a subordinate. This is just an idea to give you a better picture of what I have in mind. I'll decide how to develop it. Additionally, I'm considering explaining the spirit world in Alicia in more detail and making some changes to its original version, all to create more material for the sacred gears. For instance, I was thinking about giving Sylphid to Aze from Damaki, or assigning Ifrit to Ravel. This might change since it's still just an idea. Chapter 36, Cabalistic Formula. Draconic Dais. Underworld. This spot should be fine, Vali said to Aiden as the latter looked around. Right now, they were in the underworld, a place where the sky was purple and lacked a day-night cycle. Demonic energy saturated the air with a heavy density, making it clear that this was the origin and home of devils. They were in a deserted area, surrounded by a forest that encircled a large lake and a few scattered hills. Karumi, Arthur, Biko, Lufei, and Kuroka watched from a distance. Aiden could make out Karumi, Kuroka, and Lufei conversing about something, but he turned his attention back to Vali. The underworld has some pretty scenic natural spots, Aiden commented casually as he took in the view. I always imagined it as a living hell, lava everywhere, fire all around. Although he had visited the underworld before, he couldn't help but voice those words as he admired the enchanting scenery. Vali, who was already walking away to begin the training match, glanced back slightly and replied, "You've never been to the underworld? Or are you just not familiar with it? Even though you're over a century old, you're one of those, what's the word in Japan? Neets? Otaku." Vali's words left Aiden speechless. Even Albion agreed with the observation, surprised that he had never heard of Aiden before. Normally, people whose strength rivals that of a Satan or a god are quite well known in the world. Don't call me a NED. Otaka maybe, but never a NED. The reason I'm unfamiliar with it is because I'm a foreigner, Aiden replied casually, though slightly offended. Vali tilted his head, reflecting for a moment as he recalled Azazel's words about the identity of the mysterious man who fought against Great Red. It couldn't be, could it, he thought, quickly shaking off the idea. However, the thought filled him with excitement. If Aiden really was that man, perhaps he could help him grow stronger. It's not impossible, Albion murmured in Vala's mind, his tone calm yet thoughtful. However, if he truly is that person, I can only say that coincidences can be unsettling. At least we can be sure he has no ill intentions. Vali nodded at Albion's words, clenching his fists with determination as he prepared for the battle. Aiden also stopped speaking, reflecting on which technique to use. He knew he had to hold back to avoid ending the fight in an instant, as he wanted to gather data on the sacred gear in use. I'll use my magic formula. After all, I rarely ever use it since I'm always employing Gate of Babylon or the Angels, he thought to himself, a faint smile forming on his lips. In the past, Aiden had created a unique technique called Cabalistic Formula, inspired by the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. Just a name? While fully explaining this formula was an extensive task, its function could be summarized as a fascinating magical system that combined imagination, logical calculations, and manipulation of universal laws to manifest supernatural phenomena. The principle was simple. The less logical the created spell was, the more magical energy it drained. Aiden had designed this system as a means to harness his human side, namely his magical power. Although he could also fuel it with his spiritual energy, Ryuryoku, the main goal was to make use of his magical energy, which usually went unused except when activating Gate of Babylon or employing Kaleidoscope to travel between worlds. Aiden created this system more out of whim than necessity. His angels and demon kings already possessed sufficient offensive power, so there wasn't a real need to complicate things. However, during those 100 years of boredom, he decided to finally materialize this concept. Now then, what would you prefer? To make complex calculations about the laws of the universe and focus all your imagination? Or to simply wave the divine authorities, which activated by sheer will? Aiden preferred the latter, which is why he rarely used the Cabalistic formula. despite having created extremely efficient spells with this system. In general, he found it more practical to rely on his angels, but on this occasion, he decided to use his magic. He didn't want to end the fight immediately and was looking for a more interesting challenge. I could also use the Tuki I've been practicing, Aiden thought as he watched Vali, who was smiling with evident excitement. Well, shall we begin? Aiden said calmly. Vali responded by activating Divine Dividing instantly. Of course, he exclaimed enthusiastically as bright blue crystalline wings emerged swiftly from his back. Karumi watched the battle with a calm smile. She wasn't surprised, after all. She knew her husband was stronger. It wasn't like Vali was fighting with everything he had at that moment, but even so, he was taking a beating. Aiden attacked Vali while using his magic to summon magical constructs of various elements. However, lightning was the one he was using the most. From multiple magical circles adorned with runes and Cabalistic symbols, lightning spears shot out at high speed in hundreds of projectiles. Vali dodged them while flying with his Divine Dividing, and those he couldn't avoid, he caught with his hands, dividing their power and absorbing the spell's energy. However, the overwhelming quantity forced him to alternate between dodging and using his own demonic power to cast spells while trying to close the distance with Aiden. Since he wasn't using his balance breaker, yet he needed direct contact with his target to divide its strength. It's amazing, Lu Fei murmured with evident fascination, her eyes sparkling as she admired the intricate magical circles. Then, she turned to Karumi with genuine curiosity and asked, Karumi-sama, is Aiden-sama really human? Is he calculating that magical formula on his own? Although lightning spells weren't particularly difficult for her, what truly impressed her was the complexity of the magical circles Aiden was creating. Karumi noticed that, even though everyone kept their eyes on the battle, they were paying attention to the conversation. Calmly, she responded, Dana-sama is constantly calculating to construct the spells. But in this technique, it's also necessary to imagine the magic's form. The calculations are used to further enhance its effect. Lu Fei nodded, intrigued, and continued asking questions that piqued her interest, while Karumi answered with calm and patience. Koka, driven by her curiosity, jumped in without hesitation. Karumi, you and Aiden are married, yeah? The question carried no hidden intention. It was pure curiosity. Of course, Dana-sama and I have been deeply in love forever. Naturally, we're married and enjoy a life full of happiness, Karumi replied with a serene smile. Wow, that sounds like a fairy tale, Lu Fei commented, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. If it's not too much trouble, could I ask how long you've been together exactly? I'd love to know. Karumi closed her eyes for a moment, as if reviewing an internal record, and then replied with absolute precision. Dana-sama and I have been married for exactly 95 years, 7 months, 2 days, 12 hours, and 34 seconds. The accuracy of the response was a bit unsettling, enough to make Lu Fei twist her lips uncomfortably. Koka, however, simply let out a light laugh before turning her attention back to the battle. At that moment, Aiden conjured a net of lightning in the sky, designed to block Vali and limit his ability to fly. Vali, determined to ignore the obstacle, attempted to divide the spell by touching it directly with his Divine Dividing, but the net moved nimbly, dodging his arm and attacking him from another direction, wrapping him in electric shocks that paralyzed his body. Ugh, that had to hurt. Those spells aren't to be taken lightly. Huh? Look at that face of pain. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. But hey, why doesn't he activate the balance breaker? If he keeps this up, there's no way he'll get close, Biko commented with a half-smile while floating carelessly on his flying cloud, enjoying the show. He's probably just gauging his options, but Aiden isn't giving him room to have fun, Arthur remarked, adjusting his glasses with an unshakable calm. The electric net ended up completely wrapping around Vali, immobilizing him midair, like prey caught in a trap. Dash, Aiden pronounced firmly. Immediately, a chain of energy emerged from a magic circle beneath Vali's feet, who floated over 100 meters high. The chain moved swiftly, wrapping around his legs and binding him tightly. Under Aiden's command, The chains pulled him directly toward his position. Aiden clenched his fist, and a white aura began to surround his body, increasing his stats by 10 levels and pushing him even further beyond. Oh, Tuki as well? He has experience manipulating ki, life energy, Biko murmured, impressed by Aiden's displayed skill. However, Karumi interrupted his thoughts with a casual comment. Danasama has been practicing ki control for less than a week. What? He's very strong, Vali murmured, struggling to free himself from the chains that imprisoned him. Yes, and I can assure you he's not fighting seriously. The power he's building up in that punch is overwhelming. Use the balance breaker. If you don't, you'll lose to that blow, Albion responded calmly, though his warning was clear. Vali decided to trust Albion's instincts, which matched his own. That punch was not something to take lightly. Balance break? Vali shouted as he continued being dragged by the chains. Vanishing Dragon. Albion's voice resonated with an almost solemn calm. A blue light began to emanate from Vali's back, quickly spreading throughout his body. His power increased drastically, approaching the level of a Satan class, though not quite reaching it. Aiden watched him with interest, and for a moment, he remembered Issei's balance breaker. With a smile, he decided to wait and test Vali's endurance with his next punch reinforced with Tuki. Balance breaker, roared Albion. Boom! Vali's body was enveloped in a brilliant white armor adorned with blue jewels at strategic points. His wings grew larger and more majestic. Divide. The nets and chains that had restrained him began to disintegrate, divided by the power of the balance breaker. The energy of the spells flowed directly into Vali's body, further strengthening his aura. Vali laughed with euphoria as he launched himself directly at Aiden, disappearing and reappearing in front of him in the blink of an eye. You're brave, but also reckless. Boom! The fists of both clashed with devastating force, generating a shockwave that destroyed the ground around them, forming a massive crater. Bang! Nearby trees were uprooted, and the water from the nearby lake was launched into the air as if an explosion had erupted in the area. Cool. The impact was too much for Vali. Despite dividing the force of Aiden's attack, his own fist couldn't withstand the clash and was flung back, with part of his armor shattered. Dash, declared Aiden, creating a new chain that wrapped around Vali and hurled him back toward him. Bang! The next blow landed directly on Vali's helmet, shattering it. Without giving him time to recover, Aiden manipulated the chains and began dragging him across the terrain as if he were a toy. Vali, however, managed to free himself once again, dividing and absorbing the energy of the spell. But in the face of Aiden's overwhelming strength and the sheer number of his magical constructs, his efforts seemed futile. With overwhelming calm, Aiden continued using his Cabalistic formula to summon lightning and seemingly simple natural phenomena, yet incredibly versatile. Although they weren't extremely powerful spells, Aiden's control and precision kept Vali completely cornered. But after a while, Aiden grew bored. Besides, he already had enough data on the sacred gear in use, so he decided to end the training. Aiden, who still hadn't moved from the spot where the fight began, finally took a step forward. A golden glow shone in his right hand, and in the blink of an eye, a short sword appeared. He swung it swiftly, stopping Vali's blow as he appeared in front of him, launching a combo of attacks. Clang! Divide! Clang! Clang! Both exchanged blows. Vali, moving at incredible speed, flew around Aiden, attacking from all directions. His movements left blurry silhouettes in his wake as he divided his power, absorbing it and accumulating it within himself. However, the power was so immense that he had to release some of it through his wings to avoid his body exploding from the overload. Clang! The fists covered by Vali's armor and Aiden's sword, reinforced with Tuki, sparked as they clashed once more. Aiden spun on his axis and swiftly delivered a direct kick to Vali's stomach. Bang! The impact sent him flying into the sky, breaking part of his armor and leaving him disoriented, his eyes white as a mix of blood and vomit spilled from his mouth. Vali! Albion called, trying to wake him up. Vali's eyes shot open, and he quickly steadied himself in the air. He coughed violently, blood spilling from his mouth. "How overwhelming!" Vali murmured, staring at Aiden from above. "He's only using 2 ki and a bit of magic, and even so, I don't stand the slightest chance." Their gazes met, and Aiden, seemingly calm, observed him. "On this here, I have to head home soon. I think one of my women is waiting for me for dinner. I can't just leave her there, can I?" Aiden whispered these words, but Vali heard them with total clarity. "Hit me with one of your most polished attacks." Vali shouted, his armor glowing in a bright blue as it regenerated. "As you wish, White Dragon Emperor. Try one of my spells. Attempt to divide it with your power." Aiden activated a magic circle above his head, a radiant halo that seemed to envelop him. He felt his brain accelerate, his perception of the world becoming clearer. His thoughts flowed at a dizzying speed, and calculations were performed in fractions of a second. This was thought acceleration. Aiden was about to cast a spell that required many calculations, so he activated this ability to optimize his focus. 5 golden portals appeared behind him, and from each emerged a sword, floating in circles around Aiden. He began to calculate, imagining the swords moving and slowly ascending toward the sky. In no time, they aligned in the shape of a 5-pointed star. The swords followed his orders instantly. Aiden, while watching them, continued giving them directions through calculations and pure imagination. The swords, perfectly aligned in the shape of a star, positioned themselves in the sky, with a magic circle glowing at the center. The circle, composed of Cabalistic inscriptions that began to spin slowly, emitted a harmonious sound, as if the universe itself was responding to the invocation. Vali tensed immediately as he felt the overwhelming amount of magical power emanating from the spell. Aiden watched the magic circle descending from the sky, with the swords acting as extensions of the spell. The circle positioned itself in front of him like a portal of pure energy. With a precise gesture, Aiden pointed his sword in Vali's direction. "Dash!" Aiden shouted with imposing force. Boom! From the circle, a gigantic ray in the shape of a sword emerged at a terrifying speed. The astral blade shone with a blinding glow, as if made of condensed light, with jagged edges that vibrated across multiple dimensions, as if reality itself twisted around it. "Ah!" Vali screamed as he saw the attack approaching at such dizzying speed that he couldn't follow it with his eyes. His voice reflected his determination as he channeled all his power. "Have to mention?" Albion and Vali shouted in unison, using their ability to divide the attack, separating its space, energy, and size. They attempted to reduce its power, but it was in vain. Flash! Spark! Boom! The ray, which resembled a sword, struck Vali's armor head-on. The force of the impact disintegrated the surrounding hills, leaving a luminous trail in the shape of a star. The light shone intensely for a few seconds before fading, as if time itself had been consumed by the power of the attack. Ah! Vali was breathing heavily. His armor, which had regenerated several times, was shattered once again, and his energy was quickly depleting. Frustration consumed him. Despite his power, he was now painfully aware of how weak he was compared to Aiden and how far he still was from being able to kill Rizavim with his own hands. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him, floating in the air with complete serenity. "How about it? Are you satisfied? You don't need to feel disappointed or anything like that. You're still young, and you already have this strength. You're much stronger than most," Aiden commented casually. "You didn't even move throughout the entire fight. Except at the end, when you completely overwhelmed me," Vali said with a tired smile, his tone mixing frustration and admiration. "You toyed with me, dragging me with that chain, pulling me around, and hitting me with those spells. I couldn't even make you use your full strength. That last spell, I felt like it could reduce me to dust just by grazing me, but in the end, it barely affected my armor. It's clear you held back." He paused, taking a deep breath, before adding, "Even so, it was entertaining. It's been a long time since I had a fight that left me like this. I think I can get stronger. Let's fight again when the time comes." There was frustration in his words, but not a trace of anger. Aiden watched him in silence, not responding immediately. As for holding back, it was obvious that Aiden had held back. That last spell, constructed from the Cabalistic formula, ignored shields, magical or physical barriers. It struck the target directly, cutting not only matter but also concepts like protection or invulnerability. Vali, at that moment, hadn't been able to resist it, as he didn't have time to divide it with his divine dividing. Why was he still alive? Because Aiden had simply modified the spell so as not to kill him. It only destroyed his armor, leaving him wounded but alive. "Don't you have any other way to get stronger?" Aiden asked with curiosity. He had already gathered enough information about the basic use of the sacred gear and its balance breaker. Additionally, he had read that the wielders of the boosted gear and the divine dividing could break the heavenly dragon seal and enter a form called Juggernaut Drive, reaching a power capable of temporarily killing God, though at the cost of their own life energy. Vali opened his mouth to respond, but Albion spoke first. "That form is Vala's last resort. He won't use it unless it's necessary. This is just training, so there's no need," explained the heavenly white dragon with a firm voice. Aiden nodded, understanding, and looked at Vali, who was still injured and exhausted. He decided to end the fight once and for all, since his main interest was to analyze the sacred gear. Moreover, he wanted to go home. He still had to have dinner, and although he had told the others they could start without him, someone might be waiting out of courtesy. "Well, let's finish this here. Anyway, I won, right? Now fulfill your part of the deal." "Oh, I want to analyze it in its base form and its balance breaker form," Aiden said, extending a hand to help Vali up. As he did, he thought silently. "Zafkiel, Dalina." Aiden's left eye transformed into a golden clock that glowed intensely. The moment Vali took his hand, his wounds began to rewind in time, restoring his body to a completely healthy state, as if he had never been harmed. Vali was utterly stunned to see and feel how his body regenerated in such an extraordinary way. Even Albion, though normally unshakable, remained silent, surprised at what had just occurred. "This is incredible. It's just like Koka said. It's as if my wounds never happened," Vala murmured, looking at his hands and restored body in amazement. "Well, that's exactly what happened," Aiden replied naturally, as if it was no big deal. "I rewound the time of your wounds to a point where they didn't exist. Simple as that." Vala looked at him. "Are you a god of time? Or from the Agar's clan?" "No, you're not a devil." He shifted his gaze to the distance, where he could see his companions approaching, accompanied by Karumi, who also seemed calm and smiling as she walked toward them. End of the chapter. A/N. The Cabalistic formula was a personal invention designed to prevent the protagonist's magical power from being wasted. Here's a summary. The Cabalistic formula is the ability to transform imagination into reality through a rational process that employs magical formulas. It's a magic that moves on the boundary between the logical and the impossible, breaking down the barriers of the physical world by turning abstract ideas into tangible manifestations. As long as the user of this system can calculate it and imagine it, anything they think of could become possible. Although, of course, the more illogical the spell being created, the more power will be needed to execute it. Aiden could generate many things with this ability, such as jujitsu innate techniques, for example,